You could say that the San Antonio Spurs were always destined to be a championship contender with Victor Wembanyama, but the thing is, no one thought it would happen this quick. Looking back during the preseason, Wemby even made waves across the NBA when he had the audacity to say that the Spurs' goal for this season was to become a number 6 seed, and that was when most of his teammates were saying that winning the play-in tournament would already be quite fine. But fast forward today, with about a month left in the regular season, San Antonio owns the third best record in the NBA, and they've won 16 of their last 20 games, which includes an 11-game win streak. This actually makes the Spurs one of only 3 teams to put up at least 10 straight wins this season, with the 2 other teams able to accomplish that also happening to be the teams leading their respective conferences in the Detroit Pistons and the OKC Thunder. Now sure, that doesn't exactly make San Antonio automatic contenders, but as you might recall, San Antonio actually won both of their matchups against Detroit this season, while also dominating their season series against OKC, with the Spurs winning 4 of their 5 games against the defending champions. Those are some extremely relevant data points to look at, which makes San Antonio's playoff prospects so intriguing. And by the way, most of those wins against OKC and Detroit also fell within that 2-month stretch after the commencement of the NBA Cup, which has been so telling, as since that span of time, beginning the 18th of December, the Spurs have owned the 6th best offense, the 2nd best defense, and the 2nd best net rating in the entire NBA. All of this potentially tells us that the Spurs just might be peaking right in time for the playoffs, but then there's just one question that stares the Spurs right in the face, and that is, could this young Wembanyama-led team who didn't even make the playoffs last season actually experience real postseason success or even win the NBA title this year? Looking at it, over the past 20 years, there have only been 3 teams that have won the NBA title after not making the playoffs the season before, and those were the 2008 Celtics, the 2020 Lakers, and the 2022 Warriors. And most notably, all those teams have a very different profile from that of this current Spurs team, as all those teams were stacked with veterans and stars who also had all sorts of past playoff experience. Now, save for Harrison Barnes, De'Aaron Fox, and Luke Cornett, this current Spurs team just don't have a ton of players with postseason experience. But then for the rest of the NBA, the question is, does historical context even matter when this team has a massive 7'4" game-changing player in Victor Wembanyama who's unlike anything the NBA has seen before? Wemby has actually been ridiculous all season long, even for his previous standards, as he's currently averaging 23.7 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3 assists, together with 1 steal and 3 blocks per game. He's also getting even more dominant as the season goes on, as since February 1st, the Spurs have actually outscored opponents by a massive 225 points in the 420 minutes that Wembanyama's been on the floor, with that plus 225 rating being far and away the highest plus-minus put up by any player since the month of February, with San Antonio also putting up the best offensive and defensive rating in the entire NBA during Wemby's minutes within that span of time. Plus, all the MVP buzz surrounding Wembanyama just even gets more justified when you look at his overall impact, as when Wemby is on the floor this season, the Spurs have had an elite 14.6 net rating, but that dips down to just a .2 net rating when Wemby sits on the bench. Overall, Wembanyama has just been a force down low, shooting a hyper-efficient 75% within 5 feet of the basket, while also generating 7 free throw attempts per game. And as always has been the case, what he does in the offensive end isn't even half the story. His defense has obviously been great all season long, but more so beginning when San Antonio started their 11-game win streak, as since February 1st, Wembanyama has actually recorded a total of 53 blocked shots, and for context, that's more than what Phoenix, Dallas, and Golden State as a team have totaled within that same span of time. But then, Wembanyama's impact on the defensive end also extends even beyond those shots that he gets to block, as since February 1st, opponents have shot just 46% on 2-point shot attempts, with Wembanyama simply being on the floor. And for context, that's actually 6 percentage points lower than what the Indiana Pacers, the worst 2-point shooting team in the NBA, have averaged for the whole season. Whether he's punishing opponents by scoring 40 points in 3 quarters like he did to the Lakers, or whether he's simply mitigating an off-shooting night by recording 5 blocks like he did with Toronto, Wembanyama's sheer presence and how he deploys his insane physical tools has just allowed him to bend outcomes in favor of San Antonio, which also becomes easier considering Wemby's not doing things alone. Looking at it, no Spurs player has actually averaged more than 30 minutes per game since February 1st, while 7 of them in Wembanyama Castle, Fox, Vassell, Harper, Keldon Johnson, and Julian Champagnie have actually averaged double figures within that span of time, while an 8th player, Harrison Barnes, is still averaging 8.5 points while shooting a hyper-efficient 42.6% from deep on almost 5 attempts per game. Wembanyama is clearly the Spurs centerpiece, but there's a system that actually revolves around him that comes at work, and it's 0.5 basketball, which is a simple idea that's been utilized by a ton of Spurs teams over the decades, meaning within half a second of getting the ball, the Spurs are either shooting it, passing it, or driving it, which puts constant pressure on the defense with a goal of turning a good shot into a great one. And that system has definitely been working for the San Antonio team. For the season, the Spurs rank 11th in the NBA in offensive possessions per game finished following a dribble handoff, 10th in drives to the basket per game, and 8th in possessions that end with a catch-and-shoot attempt. And conversely, the Spurs are just below league average in terms of isolation frequency, as the Spurs average the 8th fewest dribbles per touch in the entire league this season. Basically, the ball doesn't stick to any player's hands for long, which means everybody's a live threat, which keeps everybody engaged in the offense because it can be anybody's night literally every game. In fact, since February 1st, San Antonio has actually featured 6 different players leading the team in scoring in a game. For San Antonio, many hands make work easier, and the Spurs have plenty of those hands, also thanks in part to their new starting 5. Well, when Devin Vassell returned to the lineup in late January after missing 13 games, Coach Johnson shuffled his starting lineup and put Vassell in there to join Fox and Castle in a 3-guard look, along with Wemby at the 5 and Julian Champagnie at the 4 spot. So far, the results have been good, as the Spurs are now 14-2 in games with that new starting 5, which lineup, by the way, has actually outscored opponents by 49 points in the 128 minutes together over the past 16 games, which also equates to that starting 5 blitzing opponents by an elite 13.2 points per 100 possessions. But remember when during the offseason, after maxing out De'Aaron Fox, with Stephon Castle in line for a bigger role in year number 2, with Vassell in the mix as a core piece off the ball, and with number 2 overall pick Dylan Harper about to work his way into the roster, there were actually a lot of people worried about how the Spurs might have too many mouths to feed in the backcourt. Well, as it turns out, the Spurs' backcourt is fine and even thriving. For the season, 3-guard lineups have actually been really good for San Antonio, as in the 599 minutes that any 3 of Fox, Castle, Harper, and Vassell have been on the floor, the Spurs have outscored opponents by an elite 9.3 points per 100 possessions, while also averaging 29.5 assists per 100, an assist mark which would lead the NBA for the full season. Basically, the positional size of the Spurs guards have simply mitigated the typical defensive concerns that might come with rolling 3-guard lineups, especially when you add the looming backline presence of Wembanyama. Looking at it, De'Aaron Fox is 6'3" with a 6'6.5" wingspan, which is average, but then each one of Vassell, Harper, and Castle stands at least 6'5" with at least a 6'9" wingspan. All of those guards are also competitive and tough defenders, and overall, the offensive benefits of virtually always having multiple high-level ball handlers capable of attacking the rim, moving without the ball, and facilitating on the go have far outweighed any potential concerns for San Antonio. Plus, one thing you can obviously do when you got all those guards is to just run the open floor a lot. This season, the Spurs have been the 5th most frequent transition team in the entire NBA, while also averaging the 5th most transition points per game. And it's just almost unfair when the Spurs guards are just making tough finishes in transition just look so easy because of just how skilled and how fast they are when running the open floor. Here, watch how De'Aaron Fox from half court just attacks 3 defenders all by himself, starting off quick before freezing everyone with a slow step as he makes the tough floater. Then here, after the Spurs get the steal on a break, watch how Dylan Harper surprises Max Christie going up with his right hand before going on hard mode, finishing with his left hand. Well, I already talked about the Spurs guards individually in detail in a recent video I made, so I won't reiterate about them too much here, but quickly, let me just say that guards as big, as physical, and as competitive as Stephon Castle simply just don't grow on trees. Aside from the tough defense and the emerging offense is providing, Castle's also showed continued growth as a facilitator, as he currently ranks 12th in the entire NBA in both 3-point assists and rim assists this season. The impact of this guy is definitely going to be a massive difference maker for the Spurs in the playoffs. Meanwhile, De'Aaron Fox's overall counting stats are down this year, but his assist rate is still the second best he's posted over the past 5 seasons, while his 57.9 true shooting clip this year is also the best of his career. And obviously, Fox can take over games at any given night. Well, Wembanyama and the Spurs guards often generate well-deserved praise, but another guy who I think needs to be talked about is Julian Champagnie. He's definitely established himself as a real cornerstone for the Spurs this year, as a 6'7" combo forward who rebounds bigger than his size, who moves the ball quickly, who defends all across the front court, and most importantly, who consistently knocks down three-pointers, as Champagnie has currently totaled the 4th most catch-and-shoot three-pointers drained in the NBA this season, only behind Concanupal, Dante DiVincenzo, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Champagnie shooting an efficient 38.8% on spot-up three-pointers, making him a valuable piece for Mitch Johnson to move around the floor. And it's also notable that this season, the Spurs have been scoring 8.2 more points per 100 possessions with Champagnie on the floor than when he's off it. And that is the biggest offensive on and off swing from any player in the Spurs rotation this season. But all in all, outside of any individual player impact, the Spurs have been winning also because they're winning the possession battle almost every game. This season, San Antonio's generating 2.6 more possessions per game than their opponents on average, and that is the 5th best mark in the NBA, only behind Detroit, Houston, Miami, and New York. Overall, the Spurs have just gotten better at controlling what they can across the board. Looking at it, last season, the Spurs weren't actually that bad when they turned the ball over with the NBA's 10th lowest turnover rate, but this season, they've gotten even better with the league's 4th lowest turnover rate. Last season, the Spurs ranked 21st in offensive rebounding, but they further improved this season, ranking 13th. Also, last season, San Antonio cleaned the defensive boards at a bottom 5 rate, but this year, only the Charlotte Hornets have been a better defensive rebounding team than the Spurs across the NBA. What's even more eye-opening is that the Spurs didn't get here by simply feeding on weak teams. According to ESPN, the Spurs have had the 6th hardest schedule in the NBA thus far. In addition, they currently have a 12-7 record against top 10 offenses and a 15-8 record against top 10 defenses this year. All those numbers potentially tell us that, as young as they are, this Spurs team just might already be legit and already be ready for the kind of hard-fought battles they will have to face in the postseason. Plus, again, they're also within arm's reach of the top seed in the Western Conference, as San Antonio's only 3 games behind OKC at this point. And if the Spurs do land that top seed in the West by the end of the regular season, they'll be in prime position to avoid a second-round playoff series with either OKC or Denver, which just increases their odds of making the NBA Finals. Well, for all we know, Victor Wembanyama could be that ultimate equalizer who could jump San Antonio into an immediate NBA title this year because he simply bends the realm of basketball as we've always known it. But the scariest part for the rest of the NBA is that, as both the film and the numbers suggest, the Spurs' winning formula now goes far beyond Wembanyama. But what do you guys think? Do the San Antonio Spurs already have what it takes to win the NBA title this year? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and again, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Again, this has been Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.